Absolute silence and emptiness of space would have been a logical starting point. But the truth was that space was not silent. At least, not for those inside the spacecraft Event Horizon 9. Sonic booms and the merciless bending of metal penetrated every cell of the ship. In the bottomless darkness of space, the ship was speeding forward. Their destination was an unknown coordinate, a black hole, or more precisely, its very edge. Captain Alexander Rhines, his face marked by thin but firm lines, furrowed his brow as he looked forward. He was watching the vast emptiness displayed on the ship's large screen. Void was an understatement, for this was a black hole, the lawless behemoth of the universe. Not even light could escape it. Rhines was about to plunge right into it. Why am I doing this? He thought. Why was he trying to find the end of the universe? Was it scientific curiosity, the desire to push the limits of humanity, or perhaps a personal reckoning, a need to confront the unknown? Whatever it was too late to turn back now. Some crew members had even called this mission suicidal, and Rhines couldn't blame them. The black hole was an eternity that humanity had never stepped into. Now Event Horizon 9 and its crew were about to enter this forbidden zone. There were 4 main teams on the ship: engineers, scientists, pilots, and of course, security. The security team, although unsure of what kind of threat might be encountered in a black hole, was on alert. Perhaps it would be the mysterious entities of space, maybe a species they had yet to meet in the universe, or just the uncertainties within the ship itself. Because Rhines knew that in the face of such vast unknowns, the most dangerous thing was the human mind itself. The ship's science officer, Dr. Fiona Caswell, turned to Rhines. She was quite young, possibly the youngest member of the crew, but her intelligence was dazzling. That was why she had been chosen for this mission. She was one of the theoretical physicists trying to understand the flow of time and the physical effects of black holes, and she made no secret that this mission was not just a scientific adventure, but also a personal journey. The hope of solving the effects of black holes on time could revolutionize the scientific community. Yet in Fiona's eyes, Rhines sensed that this mission had a more personal allure for her. "We will reach the event horizon in 3 minutes," said Fiona, her voice trembling but excited. "What lies beyond is completely unknown." Rhines nodded. "I'm aware, Dr. Caswell, but let me remind you again, we know there's no turning back, right? Everything we do beyond this point is not just exploration, but also a fight for survival." Fiona took a deep breath. "I know, Captain, but this opportunity, it's a chance to push the limits of humanity. It gives us the chance to make history." Rhines paused for a moment, looking at Fiona's face. "All right, we'll make history." Then he turned around, casting a stern glance at the other crew members on the bridge. "Everyone be prepared. The real madness starts now." The massive black hole in front of the ship was like the heart of space-time, pulling everything into it with its mass. The event horizon was such a place that once you entered, there was no returning. In this region, where the meaning of time and space was lost, even the laws of physics began to bend. Theoretically, anything that fell into a black hole would be trapped forever. But Event Horizon 9 was planning to cross this boundary. The engineers and the scientific team on the ship were preparing to stabilize the ship. As the black hole approached, the ship needed to withstand the pulling force, to withstand those massive gravitational waves. The chief engineer, Leon Terran, Ryan's old friend, had done everything possible to reinforce the ship, but it was still a big question how much human engineering could withstand against a black hole. Leon, standing at the terminal in the center of the bridge, was sweating. "If we try to pull back after getting this close, we'll be torn apart, Rhines. We've entered this madness. We have no choice but to go all the way." Rhines looked at Leon and nodded. "I know. That's why we're already on a no-return path." Fiona, looking at the screens, noticed something. This is impossible," she murmured. "Captain, there's an anomaly." Rhines turned in the direction Fiona was indicating. On the screen, there was a strange fluctuation around the black hole. Energy fluctuations around a black hole were expected. But this was very different. It was almost like a conscious entity, making its presence felt. The light waves curling around the black hole seemed to be taking shape. For a moment, Rhines thought it was just an optical illusion, but Fiona repeated the observation. "This could be an entity," said Fiona. "A type we've never encountered before." Rhines could feel everyone on the ship holding their breath. Black holes were among the most powerful and deadly phenomena in the universe, but what they were seeing was something else. This seemed like the black hole itself was acting like an entity. "How close can we get?" Rhines asked. Leon glanced at the screen and made a series of calculations. Getting any closer to this gravitational force could jeopardize the integrity of the ship. "But if my calculations are correct, there's a kind of transition zone. We haven't reached the event horizon yet, but we're not far off. We're at a point where time and space begin to bend. If we enter there, we could step outside the laws of physics." Rhines took a deep breath. "We have no other choice. Continue." Fiona, without taking her eyes off the screen, spoke. "This has never been done before in human history. We could be the first humans to cross beyond a black hole." Leon laughed briefly. "Or the first humans to get lost in a black hole." Rhines surveyed all the crew members carefully. Everyone's mind was circling around the same question. What would be the end of this madness? However, no one dared to voice it out loud. Everyone was silently hoping for a miracle. And then, the ship slowly continued to move towards a black hole. Time seemed to slow down. Space itself was bending. As the ship approached the event horizon, everything began to get even stranger. Light itself was bending, forming strange shapes around the ship. The crew felt for a moment as if they had stepped out of reality. Finally, a vibration enveloped the entire ship. At that moment, they understood that the fabric of space-time was in a completely different form. They were not being pulled into the black hole anymore. The black hole was inviting them in. This is impossible," said Fiona, without taking her eyes off the screen. Before Fiona's words were fully out, the air inside the ship filled with a heavy pressure. It was as if the infinite emptiness of space had suddenly filled the inside of the ship, pressing down on everyone's lungs. The ship trembled. Metallic sounds screamed. Electronic devices sparked, short-circuiting. Lights flickered on and off. An invisible hand, a force, seemed to grasp the crew. Leon clung to the control panel, his fingers moving frantically. "The integrity of the ship is being compromised," he shouted, his voice muffled. "Captain, we can't last like this. The structure is about to disintegrate." Rhines stared forward. The black hole had taken on a much different form than before. The event horizon, they called the boundary, had transformed into something like the magnetic storm surrounding the ship. The light rings spinning around the black hole seemed to be moving consciously, recognizing their presence. Black holes were supposed to be lifeless things. A gravitational force, a cosmic behemoth. That was all. But this seemed to harbor intelligence. Fiona spoke again, but this time her voice was low, as if she were whispering to herself. "Captain, we're not just encountering a physical anomaly. This is a kind of consciousness. The black hole has noticed us." Rhines furrowed his brow. "Nonsense. Black holes don't have consciousness, Fiona." But Fiona ignored him, her eyes fixed on the strange shapes forming around the black hole. "There were theories that predicted this," she continued. "That black holes are not just gravitational collapses, but also have the capacity to store information. But no one thought it could be a form of consciousness. Maybe this is not just a black hole. Maybe this is some kind of intelligent being." At that moment, the ship shook again, this time much more violently. The security officer, Commander Harris, fell to the ground as the shaking caused everyone to cling to each other. "If we don't want to stay here forever, we need to fire those damn engines and start pulling back," he shouted. But Leon ignored his words. His eyes were locked on the control screen. "There's no turning back," he said in a low voice. "Once we entered, the gravitational force is too strong. We should have pulled back before we got any closer." Rhines took a deep breath. He saw different fears, different desperations in the eyes of every member of his crew. But being a leader meant making the right choice at times like this. He didn't know what to do, because this was a situation no one had ever encountered before. But somehow instinctively, he knew that turning back was not an option. They would stay here. He didn't know what they would find, but there was no going back. "Fiona, elaborate on this consciousness theory," said the captain. "What does it mean? If this thing is an entity, what is it trying to do?" Fiona's voice was trembling, but unmistakably fearless. "If this is really a consciousness, and what we call a black hole is not just an event, but an entity, then it might be testing us. It might be trying to communicate with us in some way. Or maybe it's just observing us. But we should know that we are not just observers here. We are on its playground." These words froze everyone for a moment. Everything known about black holes was pure scientific reality. But now Fiona was implying that this deadly cosmic phenomenon had a consciousness, an intelligence behind it. And if this was true, it could be the greatest discovery in human history. But also meant it could be their end. Rhines took a few steps and approached the central screen of the ship. The black hole was appearing larger and larger, as if it was growing towards them. Every second, it felt like they were being pulled in more and more. The light waves swirling around the black hole had now clearly formed shapes. The shapes, spiraling in geometric figures, seemed to be trying to form some kind of language, a kind of symbol system. For a moment, Rhines's mind froze. As he stared at the black hole, something seemed to penetrate his brain. An unseen force, an entity, seemed to be reading his mind. At that moment, everything stopped. The screams of the crew, the shaking of the ship, the sounds around him, all went silent. In the emptiness inside his mind, only one voice echoed. "Your time starts here." Rhines looked around in astonishment. This voice couldn't be real. Was he going mad? Or was the pressure of the black hole damaging his brain? He squinted and looked forward, but nothing had changed. Yet somehow, he felt as if the black hole was talking to him. For a moment, he felt like a prisoner in the depths of space. There was no escape. Reality, time, space, all were bending against him, reshaping according to their own will. The tremors inside the ship intensified. Everyone was being thrown around. Leon was clinging to the control panel, shouting, "The engines are out of control. We're being pulled in." Entering the event horizons, Rhines turned back. "Pull back," he shouted. But it was in vain. There was nothing more to do. The black hole was pulling them in. As the crew members were thrown around inside the ship, Rhines's eyes were still locked on the strange light formations around the black hole. Time seemed to slow down, as if everything had frozen for a moment. And then, that moment arrived. The ship passed through the event horizon of the black hole. For a second, everything went silent. The crew felt the noise inside the ship suddenly cut off. Nothing was moving. No shaking, no noise, no light. The entire ship seemed to be suspended in a kind of cosmic void. The crew was standing in an infinite silence, in an unknown void. Fiona, her eyes wide with horror, looked forward. As time stopped here, she whispered, This can't be." But somehow, it had happened. The ship was no longer moving forward or backward. It was as if all the rules of the universe had disappeared here. Time had stopped. "What is this?" Harris shouted. "If we've gotten this close, why haven't we disintegrated yet? We're inside a black hole, aren't we?" Leon took a deep breath. "I think, yes. But this is not like the black holes we know. This is something else." Rhines's mind was still confused. If time had stopped, how was he thinking? How was he moving? And then, in the depths of his mind, that voice echoed again. "Time is your slave here. Past, future, now. All are subject to your will." The captain closed his eyes for a moment. The ship was motionless. The crew seemed frozen. But this entity, this voice, was offering him a proposition. The black hole was not just a physical entity. It was time itself. And now, Rhines was bowing before this power. Rhines's mind had never been so clear, yet it had never been so muddled. In this strange moment of timelessness, where reality itself was twisted, where reason and logic meant nothing, they were at a boundary. The black hole was challenging Rhines. This entity, this consciousness, was not just playing with his mind, it was placing the entire universe at his fingertips. And while Rhines was captivated by the seductive power of this extraordinary force, he was also aware of the dark danger behind it. Time is my slave, he thought. But what did this mean? Could he return to the past? Could he see the future? Or was he stuck here, in this strange void? Rhines tried to gather his thoughts, but everything was coming at him too heavily. His mind felt as if it was slowly being torn apart by the gravitational force of the black hole. Just then, Fiona's voice was heard, muffled and almost echoing. "Captain, what's happening? Is this real?" Has time really stopped? Rhines closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. Fiona's presence had pulled him back. He was still here, on this ship. Although time seemed to have stopped, there was still a consciousness. There was something odd about this. The black hole was completely distorting the meaning of time and space. Real as we understand it, Fiona, he said, but he couldn't trust his own voice. This entity, this black hole, whatever it is, it's playing with us. It's trying to do something, but I haven't figured out what. Fiona clenched her fists tightly, her eyes filled with determination. This might be an opportunity to solve the greatest mystery of the nature of time, Captain. But it could also be a trap. We know nothing about black holes. The only thing we know is that they don't follow the rules. Whatever we do here, we can't predict the consequences. Leon interrupted, his voice coming from a control panel. The ship's energy has somehow stabilized. We are inside the black hole, but the gravitational force has disappeared. This is physically impossible. But it seems we are no longer bound by the laws of physics. Or the black hole has completely taken us into its grasp, added Harris. He was restlessly moving around in this timeless void. The security team always sought control and order, but feeling that nothing was under control in this situation was driving him mad. "Is it possible to go back?" asked Harris. "Can we get out of here?" Leon shook his head. "There's no way back. We don't even know how time works here. Past, future, now, it could all be mixed up." Rhines thought again about the words whispered by the black hole. "Time here is your slave." If this was true, maybe he really could control time. This black hole was opening a door inside his mind, seemingly offering him the power to bend and shape time. But would this power be under his control, or was this just an illusion? Suddenly, the ship shook again, but this time the shaking came from inside, not from outside. A mental pressure, a weight, descended upon Rhines. He heard voices echoing inside his head. This wasn't a language, these weren't words, but the meaning was clear. This black hole was not just observing, it was actively playing with them. "Captain, this entity, it's observing us," said Fiona, her eyes filled with anxiety. "This isn't just a physical anomaly. It's trying to establish a mental, perhaps even a spiritual connection. It could be exploring our consciousness." Rhines realized at that moment that the same echo was in the minds of all the crew. They were all coming together in the same consciousness. The black hole was reading their thoughts, their fears, their hopes. This wasn't just a gravitational force, it was existence itself. For a moment, an image flashed in Rhines's mind, a memory from his childhood. A day his father took him to the edge of a cliff. On that windy day, his father had said, "Courage isn't just resisting when the wind pulls you down, it's embracing that wind and controlling it." Rhines understood that the same principle applied here in the black hole. Resistance or escape was not possible. The black hole could end them, but perhaps embracing this power, understanding it, and mastering it was the only way to survive here. His father's words merged with the reality whispered by the black hole. Time was his slave, but he had to learn to use this power. "This entity, it's trying to teach us something," said Rhines. "The meaning of time. We are not just spectators here. We are part of its game, but we also have a chance to win this game." Leon looked at him harshly. "What kind of game are you talking about? We're inside a black hole, Rhines. Even the laws of science don't apply here. This is a grave." Rhines smiled. "Is it? Or is this going to be our rebirth? Maybe the chance to bend time is a door offered to us." Suddenly, the doors of the bridge burst open. A member of the security team entered, his eyes wide with fear. "Captain, we've found something. There's a strange substance in the back of the ship. It looks like something alive, but it's also metallic. We don't know what it is, but it's infiltrating the ship." Rhines immediately sprang into action. "Everyone stay where you are," he commanded sternly. This new threat seemed to be attacking from within the ship. The black hole was reaching out not only to their minds, but also to their physical existence. They needed to intervene before they lost control of the ship. Fiona was looking at the screen with fear. If the black hole is an entity, maybe we're facing an extension of it. Is this some kind of communication, or could it be testing us? Rhines prepared to go to the back of the ship. "Harris, gather the security team. We need to find out what this thing is." Harris nodded and quickly started giving orders. The crew worked intensively to keep control of the ship, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. The black hole had pulled them in and was now testing them both mentally and physically. In the back of the ship, the strange substance was slowly spreading. The substance, which looked like a metallic liquid, was clinging to the walls of the ship and seemed to move like an organic entity. Rhines had realized that this substance was somehow an extension of the black hole. This thing was pulling them deeper. "Could this substance be alive?" asked Leon, his eyes wide with fear. "It seems to be taking over the ship." Rhines paused for a moment. If this substance was part of the black hole, it could be connected to its mind. And if this was true, they had a chance to understand the power of the black hole. "We are studying this substance," said Rhines firmly. "But be careful. Whatever the black hole is trying to do, we are part of it. We must not lose the ship." Harris and the security team slowly approached the area where the substance was. With every step, they could feel the ship trembling. Time seemed to have stopped, but this substance was moving. And with every step, they felt the black hole whispering more powerfully in their minds. Suddenly, the substance moved quickly and flowed down the walls of the ship. Harris tried to retreat, but it was too late. The substance lunged toward the security team and swallowed them. A scream was heard, then everything went silent. Rhines closed his eyes. "This thing, it wants something from us. It wants us to make a choice." Fiona, holding her breath, said, "Before we can solve the meaning of time, this entity is presenting us with a test. Maybe it wants not just our survival, but for us to establish a connection with it." Rhines momentarily accepted this thought. If the black hole was a consciousness, they had to communicate with it. But this also meant risking their lives. And then, those words echoed again in his mind. "Time is your slave. But first, you must know yourself." This was not just an exploration mission. This was a journey to understand existence itself. Rhines's mind, filled with the whispers of the black hole, oscillated between fear and curiosity. Controlling time. What did that mean? Was the black hole offering him the power to merge all times, all existences? Or was this a delusion shared with the crew, now teetering on the edge of madness? In the back of the ship, the metallic substance continued to move as if it were alive. Harris's team tried to resist the substance, but their efforts were futile. The collapse of the substance over them seemed to slowly swallow them. Screams echoed, but soon everything was silent again. As Rhines watched this horror, he was making a decision in his mind. If this thing could reach their consciousness, they could not just engage in a physical battle with it. Rhines's instincts told him that the black hole was testing them. Maybe the spread of this substance throughout the ship was also a kind of test. Maybe this was their chance to understand their own existence. But solving this required time, and ironically, it was unclear whether time was even flowing here. Fiona, her face a mixture of worry and curiosity, approached the captain. "This substance could be an extension of the black hole," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "It's interacting with us in some way, but we need to understand it. This is not just an event horizon, Captain. Time is not flowing here, but it still exists. It's as if time, as we know it, is not functioning here. Can we control this in some way?" asked Rhines. He looked around. The other crew members had withdrawn in fear, trying to understand this strange substance. If this substance is part of the black hole, can we understand it? Fiona thought for a moment, then shook her head. Maybe. There were theories about the information inside black holes, remember? A black hole could store all the information that enters it, trapping time and matter inside. If this is true, maybe this substance is a form of information, a message. Rhines pondered this idea. Black holes overturned all known laws of physics. But here, just inside Event Horizon, they were in a kind of transition zone where time and information mixed together. Maybe this black hole was trying to offer them something, or perhaps it was pursuing something darker. Regardless, they had to understand this message. Leon, can you isolate that substance? Asked Rhines. We need to learn more about it. Leon, without taking his eyes off the screen, answered. Theoretically, I can activate the isolation shields on the ship, but if this substance is part of the black hole, I don't know how effective the shields will be. This is unlike anything we know. We still have to try, said Rhines with a firm voice. If we can't control this substance, it will consume us all. Leon, though hesitant, took action. He entered a series of commands into the control panel and activated the ship's shield systems. As the shields activated, a thin energy shield began to appear around the ship. The metallic substance tensed slightly under the effect of the shields, but did not retreat. It seemed to pause for a few seconds, as if trying to understand the situation. However, just a few seconds later, the substance began to move again. This time it was more aggressive. It was trying to pierce the shields, starting to absorb the energy waves. The indicators on the ship's control panel immediately turned red. Leon continued to press buttons frantically. Captain, this damn thing is sucking the shields. It's consuming the energy, collapsing the shields. Rhines' face darkened. This thing is trying to take us over. We need to retreat. But Leon shook his head. We can't do that, Rhines. The ship's engines are still working against the gravitational force of the black hole. If we try to retreat, it will tear us apart. Rhines took a deep breath. The situation was becoming increasingly desperate. The black hole had cornered them, and with each passing second, it was pulling them deeper. If this consciousness, this entity, was trying to send them a message, the only way to solve it was to understand. They had to interact with this substance, but he also needed to protect his crew. Suddenly, Fiona's eyes widened. Captain, maybe this substance is trying to communicate with us. Rhines furrowed his brows. What do you mean? Fiona seemed to have reached a significant theory. Time isn't working here, as we know it, right? Maybe this substance is part of the black hole, and black holes store information, bending time and matter to form different shapes. If this substance is the carrier of information inside the black hole, maybe it's trying to communicate with us directly. Rhines paused for a moment. This sounded like a crazy idea, but at this point, there was no other option. If Fiona was right, the black hole wasn't trying to destroy them, but to understand them, or at least to interact with them in some way. What do we need to do? Rhines asked. Fiona took a deep breath. We need to keep isolating the substance, but at the same time, we need to interact with it. If this substance is connected to a conscious being, we need to find a way to understand it. And how will that happen? Said Leon, still clinging tightly to the control panel. Fiona thought for a moment, then turned her eyes to Rhines. Mentally, Captain, this substance is not just a physical entity. We can reach it using our minds. If time is being bent here, maybe we can expand our minds to access this information. Rhines considered this proposal. His mind was already filled with the whispers of the black hole. Could this be the only way to reach them? What exactly are you suggesting? He said, his eyes locked on Fiona. Fiona took a deep breath. We need to touch this substance. Not physically, but mentally. We need to establish a connection with it. Harris immediately objected. This is madness. We're trying to isolate this substance, and now you're talking about touching it. It will kill us all. Rhines paused for a moment, then slowly nodded his head. No, maybe Fiona is right. If this thing is trying to communicate with us, we need to respond. Otherwise, we all die. A brief silence fell inside the ship. Everyone was looking at each other with fear. But Rhines had not lost his resolve. This might be their last resort. In this strange universe where time and knowledge were bent, normal rules did not apply. And if this substance was an extension of the black hole, they had to interact with it. "Fiona, how do we do this?" asked Rhines, his eyes still fixed on Fiona. Fiona slowly stepped forward. "We can use a kind of mind-expanding frequency to establish a mental connection with the substance. We have to try this. If we succeed, maybe we can communicate with it." Rhines nodded. "All right, let's try." Fiona moved to the ship's control panel and entered a series of commands to adjust the ship's energy frequency. The crew was startled by a low-frequency sound echoing through the ship. Rhines began to feel a strange pressure in his mind, as if as he approached the substance, a connection was being formed. Then, suddenly, there was an explosion in his mind. The whispers of the black hole were now stronger, but this time they were meaningful. Rhines had established a connection with the substance. "Time is your slave, but first you must serve me." Rhines found himself in that dark void. The black hole was ruling him, controlling his mind, and suddenly, all his past, all his future, and all existence unfolded before him. "The mastery of time comes at a price," said that voice, "and you must be ready to pay it." Rhines held his breath. What could that price be? Rhines, feeling the weight of that voice echoing in his mind, realized he was being drawn right into the heart of the black hole. As he connected with the substance, the boundaries of time and existence seemed to slowly open. The past, now, and future melded together. For a moment, the secrets of the entire universe appeared before his eyes, but at that time, this knowledge was powerful enough to crush him. As all this pushed the limits of his mind, he also felt his body getting heavier. This entity, or black hole, whatever it was not just offering them a path. It was demanding they play its game. Rhines's mind was nearly breaking under this pressure when suddenly a sense of relief came. His mind strangely emptied, like a moment when all responsibility had been lifted from a dream. "Controlling time is in your hands, but doing so comes at a price," echoed that dark voice. "That price is to go beyond everything. That is, beyond your existence." Rhines took a deep breath. He was slowly beginning to understand what this meant. If he continued with this power offered by the black hole, he might become the master of time. But this would also mean the end of his entire existence. Stepping out of time, going beyond being human, Rhines realized that everyone on the ship, all the crew, even himself, would become mere memories. There was a price, but this price was heavy enough to surpass the boundaries of existence. Fiona's voice pulled Rhines from these thoughts. "Captain, we have established a connection with the substance. We're talking to it, but it is asking something from us. This is not a journey. This is a sacrifice." Rhines took a deep breath. What kind of sacrifice? Fiona, as if she already knew the answer, silently bowed her head. "Our end. It can give us control of time, but that means we will no longer exist in this plane." Rhines paused for a moment. His eyes drifted to the crew. Everyone was looking at him with fear. The low-frequency vibration echoing in every corner of the ship, both inside the ship and in the minds of the crew, created a deep tension. Harris, straining his patience, spoke up. "This damn black hole is trying to destroy us all. Why are we still waiting? We need to end this." Rhines gave Harris a hard look. The black hole doesn't just want to destroy. It wants something from us, but it also offers us a choice. Leon raised his hand, his eyes trembling with fear. "Captain, if we proceed, there's no return. If we use this power, we'll be lost in time. We'll stop being human. This isn't an end. This is an obliteration." Rhines could understand their fear. He felt the same pressure. But this black hole, this entity, was not just trying to swallow them. It was offering them an opportunity, a chance to reach the secrets of the universe, to go beyond time. But the price was heavy, and perhaps paying this price was the greatest sacrifice a human could make. Rhines thought for a moment about the weight of his decision. his responsibility to his crew and to himself, the journey they had come on. And then, he realized what power was hidden in this black hole. This was not just a black hole. This was the meeting point of all existence and time. If they took this opportunity, they could transcend themselves. But they could also disappear. Fiona's eyes were determined. Captain, isn't this what we were trying to explore? The secrets of time, the roots of the universe. Maybe this is not just an end. Maybe this is a beginning. Rhines took a deep breath. He clenched his fists and made his decision. He turned to the crew. Everyone has the right to choose. But know this, there is no going back from here. Stepping out of time will take us away from humanity. But this is also our chance to reach the greatest secret of the universe. We may never get this chance again. Silence reigned on the ship. Everyone was contemplating what their end might be. Leon took a deep breath and shook his head. Captain, I'm staying here. I'll do everything I can to go back. Harris, holstering his weapon, stepped towards Rhines. My job is to protect this place. If this decision risks everything, I'm out of this game. But Fiona took a brave step forward. Her eyes locked on Rhines with determination. When I started this journey, I already knew what we might encounter. This black hole is not just a physical phenomenon. This is a consciousness. And this consciousness is opening its doors to us. I'm continuing. Rhines looked at Fiona with gratitude. Me too, he finally said. I don't know where this journey will take us, but we are here to understand the secrets of time. Another moment passed. Then Rhines, having lightened the weight of his decision, moved to the center console of the ship. Fiona immediately took her place beside him. I'm activating the mind-expanding frequencies, said Fiona, her voice trembling with excitement. The moment we fully connect with this black hole, there's no turning back. Rhines nodded. He looked at the crew one last time. He read the terror and helplessness in the faces of Leon and Harris. But there was no turning back now. This would be the end of their journey, or perhaps a beginning. Fiona's fingers danced quickly across the panels, and then the frequencies suddenly escalated throughout the ship. The ship trembled, shook, but this time the shaking came from within, from their minds. Rhines closed his eyes and felt an explosion in his mind. The power of the black hole was now commanding their minds. Suddenly, everything went silent. Rhines opened his eyes and saw the darkness surround him. He was in an infinite void, but this void was not just of space, but also of time. He no longer had a body, only a consciousness. Fiona was there too, but their bodies had disappeared. They had become one with time itself. And at that moment, the voice of the black hole echoed once more. Welcome, Master of Time. Rhines felt all existence unfolding before him. He was no longer just a human. The flow of time, the infinite cycles of existence, were in his hands. But he had paid the price. There was no turning back. He and Fiona had become part of the infinity.